My guest this week is a UKG artist with releases on the likes of Kiwi Records, Night Bass, Steppers Club, and Beastwang. She's done guest mixes for the likes of Rinse FM, holds 35,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, and if her career in 2022 is anything to go by, 2023 is going to be huge for her. Is Izzy Fielding, aka Oppidan. Izzy, how are you?
Hey, how are you?
I'm well. Like we were talking about earlier, a little bit tired, midweek tired. It's winter now, isn't it? It's darker, sunshine's gone. Like it's a little bit colder. It's a little bit slightly more miserable. Are you a fan of winter or are you a summer person?
I'm definitely a winter person, I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I love going to the pub in the summer and I love
Yeah.
hanging out with my mates in the summer, but I like staying in as well.
Okay. What, staying in and being cozy, or you just like you could
Yeah.
prefer to get work done?
Nah, like being cozy and like in the
Okay.
summer, like I can't like hug or like cuddle my girlfriend because it's too
Yeah.
hot.
Yeah, okay, yeah, one of those ones. Yeah, one of those
Yeah,
ones. I run quite hot as well, to be fair, and always have to have like
yeah,
a fan on if you're sleeping in like in the summer or anything like that. But
yeah.
yeah, 100%. Do you get FOMO? Like, I feel like there's less. I always get less FOMO in winter than I do in summer as well.
FOMO,
Like
as in
fear of
like,
missing out. Like, so if you see people
oh,
at events or going to stuff, like I used to get it. Like I used to get it really, really badly when I was like 18 to 21, 22, where you'd like see people going to events or whatever, and you're like, oh, fucking hell, I missed that. Or you see their story, you see like stuff, and you're like, oh shit, I really wish I went to that, or I feel like I was missing out. But yeah, in
yeah,
winter, I don't
summer.
really get it as much.
Yeah, summer's, but that's because as well, it all just looks really nice, doesn't it, in summer?
Yeah, it
I
does.
think you forget about all of like the slightly shit parts of going to a festival when you can see it on someone's phone.
Yeah.
It
Oh,
just
yeah, yeah,
looks
yeah. I mean,
amazing.
that's social media through and through, isn't it? It's you see
Yeah,
the best stuff. All you see is the highlight reel. You don't see
yeah,
like everything else that goes on behind it. But yeah,
yeah,
definitely. Like I feel like most people sort of get less fear of missing out. I mean, obviously, I suppose there's not really that many festivals in the winter or autumn, so you're not really getting, like you said, those nice picturesque shots or like the mad stuff. It's obviously just all like clubs and raves. Where do
yeah.
you prefer playing? Like in a nightclub in summer or in winter? Like, is there much of a difference, or is it sort of like
Definitely like winter nightclub,
yeah? Go
100%.
on. Why?
Yeah. In the summer, I think there's obviously like less focus on the um the nightclub side of things because everyone's going to festivals
Yeah.
and I feel like it always gets left behind a little bit. I feel like club summer I can't even really name or think of like a notable club experience in the summer.
Yeah.
Whereas in the winter I think people it's their like primary source of going out, so
Yeah.
it's just a better time.
Yeah, that's true.
But
Yeah, that makes sense. Like something for people to look forward to. One thing that we were going to talk about, just I mentioned in there, sort of in the intro, like I said, UKG artist. What would you sort of define yourself as, or sort of how would you describe yourself? Not in sort of like I ask a couple of people that when they sort of can fit into more than one genre. Like some people obviously just strictly like, nah, this is just the type of music I make.
yeah,
Like it might just be jump up, drum and bass. But I feel like
yeah,
with your sound, obviously for people that are listening that might not necessarily have heard your sound, it could fit into like a couple of different categories, or it could fit into like a couple of different sort of like areas or like subgenres or stuff like that. So if you were to sort of like describe yourself as a producer or as an artist, like what would you sort of say your music is like?
I would say UKG, but I think I'm starting to like move not away from it, but expand to other parts of like the dance scenes. Like one, I've got a couple of 140 bits, and I go into like slower. Like I've released a couple of like slower UKG, but kind of the BPM of house, but it's got both in it a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so I would say UKG, but I think I do kind of blur the lines sometimes a little bit.
And what do you think fuels like your interest, like in going to those different routes? Is it from like a business perspective where you might be like, okay, this sound is getting quite popular at the moment, and sound is like picking up, or is it literally just like, I really like this music. This is something that I used to listen to when I was younger. Like this is the vibe that I'm
Nah,
feeling with.
I'm notoriously bad at wanting to make the music that's in at that time. Like,
Yeah.
I think I just make, I don't know how to describe it, but yeah, I just make stuff that I want to make and then just go with it really, depending on the time. See someone else doing something that looks sick
Yeah.
or whatever.
Is there
Um,
anything that you don't think you'd never touch, like music wise?
I think I have, but probably not again. Is drum and bass because
Okay.
I did release a couple of drum and bass tunes like very very early um, on the like Oppidan project,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't do it again because just the difference in scene is so big. Like
Okay,
the
so
people will come into like me for more drum and bass, and it wasn't happening. I just found myself like in a worse space than I was before.
what do you mean?
Um,
Sorry, they were coming to you for more drum and bass. Like you mean like people were liking what you were putting out, but you were like, actually, I don't really like this sound.
yeah, I'm not massively into it, and I did it because my girlfriend, I had just met my girlfriend,
Yeah,
and she was a drum and bass DJ, and I
yeah.
wanted to make something that she could play. Um,
Oh, that's very cute.
and then she also like she runs Invicta Audio with like her mates. They're like a drum and bass brand in Bristol.
Yeah,
It's like a reasonably sized drum and bass brand. And I wanted to get in with like her mates and like
yeah.
just like look good. I don't
Make a good
know.
impression. Yeah, of course you do.
Yeah.
Like you make a good impression. Like you want to get on with your partners or girlfriends, like obviously friends, and like you want to have a vibe. That's quite nice though that you were like, right, I'm gonna do this. Like most people obviously might have a dinner party or like tried like do something like to wow, and you're like, right, I'm gonna make tunes that all these
Yeah.
people like. So to do
Yeah.
that, that's pretty wicked. And then
Yeah.
what you were
But
just like, actually, my heart's not in it. Like actually, so that's the
yeah.
long term
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. I put it out with them like it's kind of like, yeah, like whatever. Just to be like, yeah, I'm cool, I'm nice or whatever. And
Yeah.
then they were like, can we have more? And I was like, no.
No, no, one and done. Always leave
One
them
and
wanting
done.
more. Always leave them wanting
Yeah.
more. If you got a good reaction with it, that's quite good though, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
you don't want to there's a lot of like if it had a good reaction at the start and that's where you drew the line, like everyone's just going to remember you for making good drum and bass tunes. You didn't put
Yeah.
anything out shit like that. So that's quite good.
Yeah.
That's quite good. So take it back to the start, sort of like what are your origins like right back at the start with like music that you were listening to? So like whether that was like stuff around the house or whether that was like first raves or events you were going to, whether it was anything that was really embarrassing or anything that was quite cool and eclectic, like what were you listening to right at the start to get yourself into the scene?
Um well, I don't know, like I started my parents are like quite musical, but they love music, but they're not particularly musical.
Hmm.
So there's always been music like around my house or my two houses because my parents aren't together.
Mm.
Um, and they're both like 90s kids, so it's all like 90s music. And they did like raving as well, which is kind of funny because now they
Hmm.
want to come to my gigs and stuff, which is quite funny.
Have they been to any
Um,
of them yet?
yeah, I took my mum to one in Manchester, and she was like dancing. It was really funny. She's dancing
Nice,
to MPH.
nice.
Um,
And she enjoyed it.
yeah, she really enjoyed
Yeah,
it. And then I took my dad to one in London where he had like work drinks. He works in London,
yeah.
and then I like messaged him like he was like, "Oh, can I come to your gig actually?" And then he
That's very
came
cute.
like quite wankered, just
Yeah.
like dancing in front of like at the front of everyone. I was like
Did
kind of
they
head in hands, but
Yeah.
it's
No,
still
it's nice
funny.
to support, isn't it? Like, did they like afterwards? Did they sort of say like, "Oh, this was like really different to like what we were like in the '90s when we were going raving," or were they like, "Oh, there was actually like this was quite similar to like a certain aspect
Yeah,
that was like
my
similar."
dad doesn't like the sound of like sidechain at all.
Okay.
He's like very specifically said when you do that weird thing where it like ducks, like the volume
Yeah.
ducks. Um, I don't like it
Okay.
because they wouldn't have had that then.
Yeah.
It's like a production thing, which is
Yeah.
interesting. Um,
So just as a
but
bit of
yeah,
an overview for people listening, like side chaining, just if you could, I know you obviously mentioned it slightly there, but could you just sort of summarize really simply what side chaining is?
it's essentially just like in UK garage anyway. Like the sound at the moment is to duck every beat, the beginning where the kick drum hits, and duck the
Okay.
volume of everything else around the tune.
Okay. So that
Um,
allows basically like one part of, like you said there, the kick drum to punch through in the track where everything else is
yeah,
basically brought down in volume. So so it just sounds like more obvious.
yeah, and it wouldn't have been a thing maybe when my dad was younger because you need like a computer to be
Mm,
working on that for it to work.
mm.
Um, whereas like analog equipment doesn't do that. Um, yeah.
Nice. And then they sort of like, so they were listening to music around the house. What sort of stuff were they listening to? Like you said,
Uh,
90s like rave stuff, but is that what they were putting on? So there were like any like classic mixes, or was there anything that was sort of like,
I
was it
was
like acid
more.
house, or was it trance, or was it sort of like,
It was like more like Chemical Brothers
yeah,
and Orbital,
okay,
and I'm trying to think of some other examples. That was what my dad and my mum were into quite a bit,
yeah. So
and a
that would
lot
have
of
been like,
like indie like Brit rock. like
Okay, so
bangers
sort
as
of like
well.
big beat stuff, and then like classic 90s, sort of like indie, like you said, like
Yeah,
alternative stuff there as well. Good mix. It's
yeah,
not bad, is it? It's not like it's not cheese, or it's nothing that's too sort of like embarrassing at the time. There's been a lot of people that
yeah.
will give a lot of different answers, so that's quite a good. That's quite a good step up. Obviously, that's different to what you make at the moment and sort of the sound you produce. So, what was sort of like your first introduction into sort of like whether that's UKG or bass music or anything like that, where you were like listening to it?
Yeah, baseline. I think the whole baseline thing when it first kicked off was when I was about 14 or 15 in 2014 or 2015.
Yeah.
Um, and I was really into it, and all my mates were all really into it, like sitting in parks listening to it because we couldn't
Hmm.
actually go out. Um, and we started going to festivals. Like we went to Nass Festival every year because you could go as a concession and get away with not bringing like your cousin who's 18 or whatever. Like it used to have to
Okay.
be, you could be
Yeah.
underage and go on your own and you get away with it. So we used to do
Okay.
that. And my first introduction to that kind of music was there really, like with my friends, and they're still my friends now.
Yeah.
But yeah, really, really like the height of like TQD and Notion and Skepsis and Crewcast and all that.
Hmm.
That is where I like came into it.
And so, like a Nass Festival, isn't it? It's just outside Cheltenham. I've been there once to do an afternoon.
Yeah, yeah, it's near Bristol. It's
Yeah,
in
near
Bath,
Bristol,
yeah.
and it's quite like iconic for bass and drummer bass. Like they're sort of like the two things, aren't they? Really, like there's a lot of like lively sets and a lot of like you said, it's quite actually recognised as having like quite a young crowd. I feel like when you
Yeah,
sort of see stuff online and like in the generalisation of things. Obviously, you've got Glastonbury, which is like a massive eclectic thing of art, and like people take their families, and it's a big mixture of people. Like Reading and Leeds, sort of slightly like sick formy era now, like not obviously what it was like back in the 90s and like early 2000s and stuff like that. But Nass Festival, yeah, seems to sort of be like a coming of age rite of passage for
yeah,
like
a
you
little
said,
bit.
sick form and just before sick form and slightly after sick form. Like I went there 2 years ago to shoot an after movie for 440 Records, and it was a load of people that were playing there. And I literally just drove down, shot the movie, and then went back. But I was walking through the thing and was like, oh yeah, fucking hell, everyone's like 16 and
So
17 here, like
young, yeah.
absolutely everyone. It was really
I
strange
kept
actually.
coming
I've not been
back
at a
every
festival like
year.
it. Yeah,
Kept coming back every year and just going, oh, like this is I'm getting older and older and
yeah,
older. And then I went this year as well because me and my girlfriend both played, and obviously we'd not been like as an artist before.
yeah,
Um, and we were just like, oh my god, like everyone's so young. It's
yeah.
crazy.
And it seemed quite loose as well. Like from what I remember seeing, there was a lot of obviously, like I said, if it's people's first festivals, that combined with like heavy like electronic bass music and everything like that, there was a
Yeah.
lot of wonky states walking around, and a lot of people looking like, oh,
Yeah.
you're way too fucked up, and you're like 16 years old, like 17. I mean, everyone does it, and
Yeah.
everyone did it at that time, but especially when you get like 10 years on, you're like, oh god, I really hope you're all right.
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah. Just like, oh yeah, like in the campsite, I remember like being probably about 15 and like someone chucked a bottle of piss like in my tent open.
in your
Like
tent,
just,
oh, I
yeah,
hear
like
about it like hitting the
stupid.
tent on the outside, but in the tent, someone will be getting
In the
smacked
like
in the face.
came in and
For
just
that.
went like everywhere, and I was just like, what?
What? Just a
Yeah.
stranger?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
That's fucking
It's
weird.
quite loose.
Yeah, that
It's
is
quite
loose.
loose.
That's not what you want. But you still enjoyed the festival apart from that?
Yeah, yeah,
Apart
yeah,
from the
yeah.
free
Well,
golden showers that
clearly,
were on offer, yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah, it's true. Well, yeah, you survived it. Yeah, you absolutely
Yeah,
survived it. And then sort of like what was so that's what you started listening to. You were going to those festivals, well, going to Nass especially, and a couple of the other ones, listening to TQD, listening to sort of I suppose actually it was probably the second wave of bassline. The first one would have been like 2006, 2007 with like Niche and everything in Sheffield and like Jamie Duggan and Q, like the first time round, and like
yeah.
Burger Boy and other stuff like that. And so that was sort of like the second wave of like UK bass and bassline, like 2014, 15, around that era. And then sort of like, what were you like, right, I'm going to grab a pair of decks, or I'm going to start producing, or I'm going to like try get a first set at like a local pub or like small nightclub or anything?
It was yeah. I got a pair of decks,
Yeah.
and then was doing like me and my mates used to, because obviously all this time we're like still underage, like we can't go out, and we were living at the time. I was living in like rural Dorset, so there's like nothing really
Nice.
to do.
Yeah.
Um,
Not a big club scene, or not a, like a massive, like
yeah,
established club scene
there's
there.
no baseline scene in rural Dorset.
Whereabouts
Um,
in Dorset? I went to Bournemouth Uni, so was there for like 3 and a bit years. So I
like
sort of know.
Yeovil, but like south of
Okay.
Yeovil.
Yeah, yeah, I know roughly what you mean. Yeah.
Like Dorchester, in between
Okay.
Dorchester
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and Yeovil. Um, but yeah, so we used to like rent out village halls and
Really?
put like a rig in it
Yeah.
essentially, and then that's how I started like DJing, was doing
And where
that.
were you
And
getting a rig from? Like, was it a mate of a
like
mate that had it,
it
or
was
just
like a
renting it?
mate of a mate, or it was like someone's older cousin that's got
Yeah,
one, or like whatever. Like I remember a couple of times we broke my one of my mates' older cousin's rig, and he was like the cool, like he's the older cousin, like he could sort
yeah.
us out with everything. And yeah, everyone was like, 250 quid, 250 quid. I ain't got 250 quid to fix it. It's all like 15, 16.
Yeah, 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 of
But
course. So
yeah,
what that's quite interesting then really, because like I said, you were like, right, we can't really go to events and we don't really just want to be doing it at a house party. So like you're going to like a village hall or like a church type of thing, putting on an event. Like how are you sort of like were you like charging tickets for like entry and stuff like that?
yeah, we're doing like a quid on the door.
A quid on the door. Look at
A
that. That's a
quid.
bargain. That's
Yeah.
sick.
I
And then
don't
what
think
like
everyone ever paid the quid though, to be
no.
honest.
And then what were you doing? Like advertising it like on like Facebook and stuff like that to like get people to turn up.
We just invite like all of our year group at school, and a
Okay.
couple of people from the year below, and a couple of people from the year above.
Yeah.
This is it, probably in like year 12, year
Okay.
11. No,
Yeah,
year
yeah.
11. This isn't sixth form. Um, and yeah, and then we just get as many people to turn up as possible.
And so how many people were sort of like coming through the door on average at like some of those events?
I can't really remember, to be honest, but like my idea of just like space is like not there from I just can't remember, but probably about 300 people
That's
would
good. Do you
come.
know? Like, there's people obviously that put events on in nightclubs, like for the first couple of events, that struggle to get that through the door.
Yeah,
Obviously, like paying a quid each, like is probably going to be quite enticing for people as well. And also, like you said, if they can't get into like clubs, they're thinking, "Oh, well, fucking hell, where can we go to like see music or like
yeah,
where all our mates are as well?" And what
proper
was some
gap
of
in
like
the
the what?
market.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's always what you got to find, isn't it, in business? Like a gap in the market. What was some of the like? Is there anything like standout fuck up from some of those early events that you were like, oh god, this happened and it's horrendous? I know you mentioned about the rig breaking, but is there anything where you were like, oh god, like when we're like,
There's I can't remember if it was one of those events, but I think it was a party that was in a village hall. We kind of like say it was a party. I can't remember if it was for no reason. Yeah, I think it was just a party. But um, one of my friends, Bartek, there's a picture of him with the fire extinguisher from the village hall, just like spraying it everywhere.
yeah,
And like, there's still the photo. Like the photo is just like perfect. Just him, just like absolutely having it to like some Mackie G or something, like
nice.
spraying the fire extinguisher
Would
everywhere.
they let you book it? Like, did you have to say? Did you have to lie about like what the event was? Because I'm
Yeah,
assuming like obviously if it's quite a small sort of like rural thing, and if you're going, yeah, we're putting on a rave, quid ticket entry,
yeah.
we're getting a rig in, they'll be like, absolutely not, you're not booking it out.
You'd
But
you'd have to say there was you'd have to say there was an adult involved, so there would
yeah,
have to be one adult involved. And luckily, like one of our mates' dads was just like really nice and really calm, and
yeah,
liked going out as well, and saw what we were trying to do with it, and just kind of showed up and just put a blind eye to everything.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but yeah, a couple of times we had like other people's parents do it, and like they were fuming at the state of it and stuff. But
yeah.
we stopped doing it, I think, because they started to ban people of that age booking out village halls.
That makes
Um,
sense. That makes sense. So how many of
After
them do you
that,
reckon you put on, like before you obviously got the ban in?
I think there was about five of
Okay,
them.
that's all right. That's a good
Um,
little stint to like cut your teeth on and like first putting on events and stuff like that.
yeah, it was really fun as well. We just really wanted to go out, be able to like hear the music that we really liked, but
Yeah,
just couldn't. And it was either that or literally going to Nass once a year.
yeah.
So Nass
Okay,
was
so
like
that's yeah.
momentous, like it's
Pilgrimage.
nearly
Yeah,
Nass.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
but yeah,
And then sort of what were the next steps after that then? So like is it what you suddenly turned 18 and you're like, right, we can take this to like a nightclub now, or was it something else?
not even. I was just wanted to go out as much as humanly possible when I turned 18. I think because I hadn't had the privilege before.
Mm.
Um, yeah, went to loads of festivals, went out a lot, and then just the whole time like ticking away, like having a go at production. But I focused on like other aspects of production for quite a while. Focused on like neo soul and jazz and um hip hop and like different stuff, because I was
Mm.
originally like a jazz guitarist as well. I did that all through school, and that was also what interested me. I was like really into like Kate Janada and Tom Mish and
Okay,
that
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
thing. So I did that for a while, and then came back to making. I found dance music like too difficult. I just like going out to it, and then
Okay.
went to that for a bit and then came back and then found actually it was a lot easier than making the stuff I was making before, and I'd like got a lot better quite quickly. And yeah, and then I started just putting stuff out.
Wicked. And so, like, what was it that was over a point where you were like, actually, I think I want to be like a jazz musician, or I think I want to be trying to produce this type of music?
Yeah, there was I well, I applied for to do a degree in jazz
Mm.
in Leeds College of Music with a side of like music production,
Hmm.
and I didn't get it, so then I went to Bristol to do just music production.
Okay,
Um,
cool.
and I think that is kind of like what shapes what I've ended up doing, because I probably would be on a completely different path if I decided to do like a full-time performance
Yeah,
degree.
you probably would have, to be fair. Like you said, if you'd studied a little bit and you know the theory of everything that with jazz, and that's what the main focus of your degree was going to be, then like, yeah, I mean, obviously there's like sort of chaos theory, like anything could have like changed at any point like there. But talk to me about Bristol, because I don't really, I've only had one or two people on the podcast about Bristol. Like I sort of think about like music geography in the UK, and like some people in the music scene will say like obviously different cities are like well established for like different sounds, and obviously like Bristol being big for like trip hop and drum and bass and Ronnie Size and like Massive Attack and everything else from that sort of like era and that sort of like psychogeography, but then also like oh shit, what is it? Is it Turbo Island that's in Bristol at the moment?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
then that sort of like new, not new, but like that sort of vibe as well from like Bristol, like having that new bass sound, and having a bit of sort of like recognition there, and about it sort of seeing like Wub Club and everything else that's going on around that area. Like, what does Bristol sort of mean to you, like with regards to music, and how would you say it sort of differs to say like London or Manchester?
I think the scene in Bristol is a lot more. I think everything's got its space. It's drum and bass capital. Like
Mm.
you can't deny that, and the crowd has previously been, and I think it's getting better, but it's always been quite difficult to please as like a place to go out and like and play. Um,
Difficult to please in the sense that, right, these are people that are coming up to these events that are not that necessarily use this term, but are like music snobs and be like, right, impress us, like we know music through and through, and
a
we try to do
bit,
this, or
but also just like they're just D&B heads. Like there's just so
yeah,
many D&B heads, and obviously what I'm doing is a little bit slower and a little
yeah,
bit more kind of it's more like a different kind of fun. I think
yeah.
um, that people a lot of drum and bass heads sometimes can be quite serious about the music, and
Hmm.
I think quite a lot of garage is very like fun and relaxed, and that's kind of the point of it. It's like a
Yeah, do
bubbly.
you know what? I'd agree with that actually. Like, you get a lot of purists in drum and bass that are like, no, I just like liquid. Especially, I find it more as well if it's to do, and there'll be people listening to this that will hate me for saying this, but like, I feel like if it's liquid or if it's something that's not high energy, so it's not like jump up or neurofunk or anything like that, which are obviously subgenres of drum and bass. Like, so I
Yeah,
feel like people that like jump up or neuro or that will be a lot more open minded and like energy, and they're just like here for the vibes and whatever. And
yeah,
stuff that's like halftime or stuff that's like liquid,
that IDM
or
side.
yeah, like the more sort of what you'd like intelligent or more sort of like serious, and people might not like me for saying this, but would I'd say that people that enjoy that or are massive purists in that might be slightly more closed minded in like, this is only what we like and this is what I've come here to see, and I'm then maybe the type of people that would be jumping in the comments on like some mixes or jumping in the comments of some stuff like that. And I probably would agree with you saying there that like garage, especially this new UKG and everything that like obviously yourself and Sammy and Kiwi Records and everything else that's going on there would be sort of like fun. It's supposed to be fun and energy, and like the crowd is supposed to be having a good laugh, and it's quite welcoming, and you get sort of a lot more features and collabs and like people jumping on like doing vocals and stuff like that. I'd say is a lot more open minded and accessible to people than some of the subgenres are specifically
Yeah,
as well in like drum and bass. I'm trying to think if there's any. Do you think there's any sort of like other genres of music where you get like actual like, this is like serious, like this needs to be like this, like
I don't know, to be honest. Drum and bass can be bad for it, but yeah, I think like the Bristol scene's been bubbling as well to like be quite underground and just like
mhm.
quite raw, and it's really good, and I think it's all started to tie together a bit. But for a while, I did feel like it was quite a difficult place to play. But I think recently, it's a lot better. It's a lot less sleepy.
Yeah.
I think. Um,
I'm going to put you under pressure now. What's the best venue in Bristol?
Lakota,
Yeah.
100%.
Okay. Cool.
I've never played in Motion,
Okay.
but I am playing in Motion in a couple of weeks.
Nice. Why is Lakota the
And
best?
it's like my home. Like I was a resident there. All my friends are still residents there.
Hmm.
Like my girlfriend's like basically lives there. My girlfriend's like best mate from school like runs it. Like it's
Hmm.
just like everyone there is like people that were residents there and now the people that are running it. Like it's
Hmm.
just like yeah, it's home 100%.
Wicked. Wicked. And what would you say that's your favourite venue in the UK, like overall, out of everything?
I think so.
Yeah.
I I've not been to like warehouse projects. I've not been to Printworks,
Yeah.
and like I feel like they are categorically like just people's favorite venues in the UK, and I could
Yeah.
100% see why. But I think there's so much history in Lakota for me from like seeing Sammy in like 2018 when I just turned 18 and just thinking it
Mm.
was the sickest thing in the world, and then turning around to be like playing
Yeah.
with him, build on the same like lineup or whatever in like February this year. It's crazy. Like it's my home. Yeah, it's my home.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's my
Yeah.
home.
What sort of cap is like Lakota? I've not been there myself, but I like when you were mentioning there, I know a lot of people do obviously say Printworks, which is obviously closing down next year, but the owners of that are sort of running that new one called the Beams, which they're taking that over because Printworks is going to be closing next year, and Warehouse Project, which are great, but I personally prefer like the small, like slightly more intimate ones, like smaller.
Yeah,
Like, I get it when there's like a massive crowd, but if you've got say like 20,000 people, I feel like sometimes, like if you go to a rave or you go to an event and you've got that many people there, they'll be like, there'll be say like out of 20,000 people, like there might be 14,000 that are like massive, like absolutely there for the music, like love it, love seeing the artists or whatever. Then there might be sort of like 2,000, 3,000 that have bought tickets because their mates are going and they're like, right, I'll just go check it out, whatever. And I feel like you
yeah,
maybe dilute the energy and you dilute the bigger the venue, obviously because of the sheer size, whatever, the energy is more difficult to like keep contained and it's more difficult to sort of get an atmosphere because obviously the bigger the venue, like the atmosphere can sort of like be more difficult to actually like build up. And then
yeah.
also you sort of where you get the more people you invite or the more people you can hold, the more chances there are of like people coming. And obviously everyone's like open to, and there's no sort of say about who can go to an event or who can't. But the more people that are obviously there, the less likely you are to like actually get people that are there for the music, or like there for like, I know this artist, I know this sound or whatever. And you
I
just sort
think
of get,
yeah,
there's nothing wrong with it, but like, you get some people that like, oh, I'll buy a ticket because all my mates are going. And then you might get
yeah,
someone that's like, oh, I just want to go out tonight. Where should we go? This and that, which is obviously
yeah,
fine.
yeah,
And obviously it takes a massive blend of people. But I do find the bigger venues, you'd like the nights, if I think back to raves or whatever, and I think back to an event where you like have like flashes in your memory, or like that was a sick drop, or like that was a sick set, or that was everything mad. They're always smaller ones, and like they're always slightly smaller ones. I'm thinking like Fabric, XOYO, a couple of the smaller ones up in like Manchester are sort of like, oh, that's
yeah,
good, and the energy's mad and the energy's popping because the room
yeah.
might be say like 300 people, but it's 300 people that like know every single song that's coming
It's
in, like they
it's
know,
more
yeah,
infectious as well. Like it's
yeah.
just a tighter
Um,
space.
yeah. So what's Lakota then? Is it massive or is it sort of like quite?
I think it's about 2,000 when they
Okay.
open up the whole thing, and
Yeah.
like I think there's like one, two, three, four. I think there's 5 rooms in total.
Mm,
So I think the main room is about 1,000, and
mm.
then all the other rooms kind of add up to another 1,000, I
Okay.
think.
Cool.
But yeah, it's a weird shaped club because it's like instead of it being a big kind of just like a massive amount of space in front of you,
Mhm.
there's a balcony and like it's all kind of to the right. So like it's a bit of a strange like setup, but
Mm.
it does make you feel like it's very like iconic, like it's very um it is just like Lakota is Lakota. There's like nowhere that's similar to it, I think. But
Do you
yeah,
feel like that there's maybe a bit of do you ever feel like there might be like a little bit of oversaturation in the UK?
I don't think with the garage stuff so much. There's a lot of drum and bass events though. And I think in I can only really talk for Bristol because I've lived here for so long, but like there
Mm.
is literally an event on every night. Like if I wanted to go out tonight and watch drum and bass, I'd
Mm.
be able to find at least 2 options, 2 or 3
Mm.
options. And that's like every single night of every single day. Um which is great, but yeah, there could be a bit of oversaturation in Bristol, I think, with drum and bass. It's really hard to like get in for
Mm.
a lot of my friends that are drum and bass heads. They want to like
Mm.
get into it and they can't. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like this. it's quite interesting when we've had people speaking on about like events and bookings and stuff like that in the past. Like it's sort of two mindsets where obviously all of these events that go on and every festival and every show is at the end of the day a business. Like people think like even like working the news or everything, people like, oh, why are you posting this? Why are we doing this? Why like that? And it's like it's a business at the end of the day. Like none of these things are charities. Unfortunately, like everyone has to make money and everyone has to do stuff. So like obviously there are events that like people will be like, you couldn't just be like, right, we need to halve the amount of events that are going on in this town or in this city, because it's sort of like making every event is not hitting as much as it can because there's like loads of them on. But obviously
Yeah.
people want to run labels, want to run nights, like have to put events on and do stuff like that. But then I definitely over the last, I think it was specifically like this summer as well for festivals, it just sort of seemed like every festival lineup was just like the exact same, and it's got worse and worse over like the last 5-6 years. This is even before COVID, where you sort of see like big festivals like Reading and Leeds, which obviously used to be like rock, metal, like everything like that, and then they'd have sort of like one or two dance acts. They'd have like the Radio 1 dance stage, but like you said, it would be like Chemical Brothers or other big stuff like that before. And then especially over the last 5, 6, 7 years have just moved. Obviously they're moving with the times. Obviously that's what creates money. That's what creates ticket sales. That's what does that. But when every festival starts to do that, it's then like, oh, they just all look like the same. Like everything looks like each other. Like We Are Festival looks like Part Life, looks like Festival, looks like this, like
Yeah.
this, like this. And then you get the occasional ones where you get like God, what have I forgot the name of it? Boomtown, we'd have like, okay, cool, right, they're going to put on some hip hop acts and they're going to put on some like dub acts, and they might have like, they had like Damian Marley and other stuff like that before, and it's like, okay, cool, right, that's some different acts that you wouldn't see other headline slots, but a lot of
Yeah.
them it's just like, and it's great, obviously it's great for DJs and it's great for like, what I do want to get on, well, I'm not going to get onto it now, but it's great for management, and it's great for like booking agents and stuff like that as well, where they're like looking after say like 12 different acts, and they're like, yep, you can have this act, but you've got to book this person as well, or yep, you can have this act, but you've got to put this person on as a support. And it's like everyone knows it goes on, that sort of
Yeah.
works within the industry, knows what goes on in the scene, but it does sort of then get to the point where you're like, oh, it's difficult in a way. It's like a victim of its own success, where it's difficult to then stand out from the
Yeah.
crowd, because you're like, okay, we're going to put on this cliche sort of drum and bass night, or we can put this cliche sort of like house night on, and it's going to have this as the headliner and these two like or three sort of support DJs, and it's just like, well, that just looks like something that went on last month. And then
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
obviously don't want
Yeah.
to buy tickets for it, and then obviously then
Yeah.
because people don't want to buy tickets for it, like they have to put prices up, and then like venues obviously are going like spending like charging more money to like obviously hire out venues and like cost of living and everything like that, and it's just like, oh god, it's just this perfect storm of like bullshit where
Yeah.
it's very difficult to like generate something where you go like, oh, that's a really new, cool, sick concept, or like that's a really new night that I've never heard of before. You're like, oh, that is going on like sort of here around there. But I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't want to be
it's
negative around
difficult.
it, but it's
No, it's difficult. It's definitely difficult. I think like the last 6 months as well, like I've noticed the clubs get emptier and
yeah,
emptier. Um it does do that, I think, every year, but just like at the moment it's difficult. And over summer, like all the festivals that I was in and around, like I found that they were all kind of half capacity and not
yeah,
like full.
yeah.
And if there were less festivals, it would be a thing. But obviously, like you said, like
Yeah.
businesses got to run their business.
And I
Um,
used to feel like this is what we said right at the start as well, going back to the FOMO thing. Like there was a couple of times where I'd be like, oh, I need to see this set. Like the only thing I now sort of get excited for is if it's like a certain DJ doing like a classics set, or a certain DJ doing like a set that's not necessarily specifically one of their own, but it's like a one-off type thing. But the
yeah,
amount of times now where you're just like, oh, I've missed this like I'm not going to this event, and it's like, oh, well, I could probably see him in 2 months, like in the same city or in the same
yeah,
venue. It's
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
there's no beef, or there's no sort of like, oh fuck, I've missed that.
yeah,
And it's like, well, I can see him like in the next city across, or I can see him here and that, and which is good. And obviously it's a beautiful thing to say. Like obviously people that went out like fucking 30-40 years ago would not be able to say the same thing. So it is sort of like is a very privileged position to be in, to be like, oh yeah, I haven't got to worry about missing this or missing that. But then it does make it very difficult to get excited about a lot of things. I don't know how you feel about that, but I
no,
find now it's like I'm not really
100%.
excited about it, or I'm not really sort of like, I'm not like, fuck yeah, like this is wicked, this is sick. And I don't know whether it's because I'm potentially getting slightly older or whatever, but there's no events that are sort of stuck out where I'm like, you've got who? Or like, you've booked what? Or like, how are they
Yeah,
playing
yeah,
here or
yeah.
anything? It's just like, oh, it's a name that I've seen like
With
five times.
exception of like Boomtown,
Yeah,
like with I saw Noisier at Boomtown
yeah,
this year. It was really good.
yeah,
Um, I think there's a few. but then like also you could just not to say like who you booked at Boomtown, and people would just turn up anyway because it's
Yeah.
just a sick experience.
There's no bit of scandal around, not scandal, but there's a little bit of beef around it this year where like they had, because obviously it's no secret that like lots of festivals like took a massive loss this last year, even if they went ahead, like lots of them had to cancel and lots of them put out of money. But with regards to sort of like festivals having to make up losses for like obviously taking a year and a bit off, having to pay artists retain like fees that they would have even already got contracts to obliged to, because even if the event
Yeah,
didn't go on and stuff like that, so then they're down. That combined with like big companies, I won't name who, but like big company like ticket sales companies that have had money locked up or have gone into liquidation or have been like declared bankruptcy. There's
yeah,
lots of stuff where it's gone like fuck, like just like I said, a perfect storm of like bullshit around the whole of the industry where it's like
yeah,
money getting here, oversaturation here, nothing being going on here. And so it's like, oh, fuck, okay. But then I remember, then posted, even Boomtown on their actual thing posted a social media post saying like, we're not having as bigger acts this year because we sort of like need to recoup. This is not verbatim. This is just a general gist, but like we're not having as big acts this year because we need to recoup some losses. We're still putting on great artists and we're still putting on big people, but like don't expect it to be like some massive, incredible headliner because of X, Y, Z,
yeah,
which is great because obviously it sort of takes it back to its grassroots. However, if you are someone that's young and maybe getting into the industry, and like, for example, if you'd have, I was about to say, if it was like, if you could take yourself back to like 15, 16 at Nass, and they didn't have a massive headliner on, you might be like, well, why the fuck am I going? But obviously that was
yeah,
a coming of age thing. So you might have still went, but there might be people
yeah,
that have expected like some one massive act that are now suddenly sort of like, I don't really want to go now. But on the flip side to that,
yeah,
obviously then people kicked off with Glastonbury, who had to put their tickets up by like 60, 70 quid this year, or roughly around that. To be
yeah,
able to do that and still be able to have the festival and have those headliners, and then so you're obviously like, you're buggered if you do, you're buggered if you don't. Like both ways, people are always going to have something to complain about.
yeah, yeah. No, you're right. You're 100% right.
Yeah, so
Um,
it's interesting. It's a difficult time, obviously. I think to work in the music industry, and I don't think obviously everything is fully reset or has gone back to normal 100% since like COVID or lockdown. Obviously, we're sort of like a year and a bit out of like festival or events and stuff coming back. But obviously, a lot of people will put on, like we said about social media, we'll put on like a brave face, or we'll put on the highlights, we'll put on like, yeah, this is all wicked and going well. When actually, if it comes to like the business side of it, or maybe back in the head office, they're like, fuck, we need to make some money, or we need to do something to like sell tickets, or we need to do some other bits and pieces. And what frustrates you about the industry? Is it like, well, about DJing or producing?
I think one of the hardest things for me is just like the lack of like routine, just with the nature of it. Um, but there's nothing I like. I don't feel there's. I mean, there are things that frustrate me, like in terms of like inequality and like all sorts of things like that. But in terms of like like my personal frustration, it's like not being able to like go out with my mates on the weekend,
Mm,
or missing like important things like birthdays and
mm.
um yeah, had my graduation, which I could only just like attend, stuff like that. That's quite like difficult sometimes, but it's
And do you
kind of
mean that's because you're booked, sorry, to go to shows, or you've got events
yeah,
like or
yeah,
gigs that
yeah,
you're going to? Yeah.
yeah, or just traveling or whatever. But yeah, and then also like not having like the direction in the week, because like that is your time to make music, but it's also your time where you want to catch up with friends, but then like everyone's works like a 9 to 5, so like it's slightly isolating.
Yeah.
um but I still love it though.
Yeah, so it's just sort of being like out of sync with the rest of like the general population with
Yeah, you
regards to
do
like most of my friends work nine
slightly.
to five, Monday to Friday. Friday evening they go out, Saturday evening they might go out, whatever, and then Sunday relax and chill. And obviously you might be
Yeah,
traveling around the country, might be going abroad. Obviously, then yeah, so yeah, I get that. Maybe sort of just being out of sync, yeah, with just sort of
yeah,
like what the normal
100%.
is. Yeah, that's understandable. I think most producers, or well, not even producers, I think most producers, most managers, most artist liaisons, most like everyone that sort of like works with an artist or works within the music scene will sort of be on that sort of mad travel. I mean, when we've asked people this before, like the big thing is like travel. People hate traveling. People hate the hours of going around, and yeah, some of them are. Um, yeah, like you hear obviously like going around the country and like going for like 5, 6, 7 hours on the train or whatever, obviously to play an hour set. You're getting good money. Obviously it's a vibe and you enjoy it, but it's yeah, it's got to be quite difficult. And obviously it's got some people have spoke about it being quite taxing on mental health and stuff as well a lot of the time, where it feels like people are like, oh yeah, it looks wicked obviously online, and you put up photos and you put up videos and there's a good crowd hype, and like you put up when you get a release and an EP, and obviously put the reels up. But then some people are like, I just feel so fucking pressured into doing this. And sometimes obviously you want some time off, but obviously anyone that works in like the entertainment industry, if you're like a comedian or an artist or in a band or anything like that, you can't really be like, a lot of the time, unless you're like massive artist, would feel comfortable to be like, you know what, I can't do this show because I'm having a
Yeah,
bit of a mental
it's
health problem at the
difficult
moment.
as well to know like the balance where you should be turning down shows.
Mm,
Luckily, because my girlfriend's a DJ as well, we work on the same schedule, so it's
mm,
like it's fine. Like we're both away weekends. We know we can't do weekends, and then the time we do spend with each other is in the week. Like we
mm.
tend to like have a Sunday roast with some other like DJ friends, like all coming back, and then Monday off, and then we'll like do the week. Um, but yeah. I forgot where I was going with that. To be fair.
No, it's all right. It's quite nice that you obviously can be supportive of each other if you are on the same routine, and like you can both empathize, like knowing like how you feel and like what's going on. Like you said there about feeling isolated from other friends or like slightly off a kilter with other friends, but feeling like nice and on the same sort of track as your girlfriend.
Yeah. I think as well, like mental health wise, I think people underestimate like how much sleep you can get. It's just you just can't really get much sleep if you're
Mm,
doing like a show that like finishes at 4 in the morning, and hotel checkout is the same for DJs as it is everyone else.
yeah,
It's like 11
yeah,
a.m. and
yeah,
like
yeah,
that, and then you have to travel home, and then you have to like not be tired because you've got like stuff to do. I think
yeah,
that's like quite tiring, but then learning how to just learn how to like take breaks and like just relax, because I think if you're self-employed, you feel like you need to be put in as much maximum effort in at all times, and if you don't have the structure of having a weekend, it's quite difficult to know when you should stop. Like, when
mm,
should I stop working? When should I be not trying to make music? When am I giving my brain a rest? Like, when do I do that? I think that's probably one of the difficult things about it.
yeah.
But I'm trying to get that down at the moment with my roasts on Sunday.
With the roast, the
Yeah,
religious roast happening on the Sunday, getting that
yeah,
routine in every week. That sounds like a good vibe. Do you know what? I
it's
love a roast.
nice.
I
It's
fucking love
really
a roast dinner
nice.
so much. What's your go-to roast?
I mean, if I'm out, beef.
Yeah,
I'm at home, chicken. I
chicken,
think.
easy to do, innit? Easy
Yeah,
to do chicken at home. Yeah.
it's better as
Um,
well,
yeah, it
but
is.
and it's cheaper.
It is cheaper. It is 100% cheaper. Are you going to be doing the cooking for Christmas?
Nah,
No, not a
no,
good cook.
I'm not. I'm not very good. I'm an alright cook, but I'm alright at doing a roast. But like me and Anais, my girlfriend, have
Yeah.
tried to do like roast for our friend before, and they've all been like, "Nah, we'll just do the roast. You could just come."
Oh no, you've been pinned off. Oh, at least you put the effort in though. But it's that's not the most positive feedback that you'd have for doing
Yeah,
that. But it's the
there's.
thought and the love that counts, isn't it? It's the thought and the love that counts.
We had to go, and they were just like, "Nah, just come around
Nah,
ours. It's fine."
allow it. We'll do it. We'll do it.
Yeah,
Well, I
exactly.
was going to finish on my question to finish was going to be what piece of advice would you give to a producer or an upcoming artist? But you've beautifully and succinctly summarized that in the last section where you were saying about having a routine, making sure that you do look after your mental health, making sure that you do set time aside. And even though you want to say yes to everything and yes to all the shows and yes to the production and stuff like that, that it's good and healthy to find the balance before you sort of get pushed to that breaking point and be like, actually, you know what, maybe I don't need to do like a show every single Friday and Saturday for like
Yeah,
every single time because I
for the
need some
rest of
me
your
time.
life as well.
Yeah,
Like,
for the rest of your life. You still got, I mean, yeah, if you're obviously in it for the long run and you carry on doing it, yeah, you want to make sure that it's a sustainable career and not something that's like a flash in the pan where it's like a sprint and you suddenly do 2 years of like loads of music and then you're burnt out for like forever and ever. So
yeah,
that's actually a lovely piece of advice. To finish on, really, Izzy. So thank you very much for jumping on the episode and record today. It's
no
been
worries.
interesting to obviously I've not really spoken to anyone that was putting on. We spoke to Days Plate about the free parties he put on and the different stuff that he was putting on there, but I don't think he was doing necessarily village halls, and I don't think he was doing stuff like that. So it's interesting to think like, yeah, people that lived in rural areas and you weren't 18 yet, so you couldn't do it, so you just make do, amends, and like put on events in there, and that's how you cut your teeth. And then obviously, like you said, having a bit of a jazz background and could have potentially went down that route, but instead went to Bristol and obviously did the music production there, and then obviously that has led on to all of the Bristol music and all of the scene and all of the bits and pieces that follow through there. So it's been a great episode. Thanks very much, Izzy.
Thank you.